The people have tried to conquer over the energy resources. Probably they wanted to dominate this world by having the energy resources quite in close contact with them. Energy is the most dominant contributor of climate change, accounting to around 60% of the total global greenhouse gas emission. Bioenergy, which is the single largest renewable energy source today, providing about 10% of the energy supply. Good morning and welcome to the first session in Chapter 4, Unit 4, second semester B.Ba, Sustainable Development, where we are going to speak about renewable and non-renewable resources. Now, what has been a challenge for us to understand is that the lack of access to energy supplies and transformation systems, which is a constraint to the human and the economic development. The people have tried to conquer over the energy resources. Probably they wanted to dominate this world by having the energy resources quite in close contact with them. They wanted to rule this world by saying that they have a complete control over the energy resources. But over a period of time, they started understanding that the regular resources, the non-renewable resources, are depletable in nature. So when you talk about crude oil, when you talk about petrol or diesel or any format of these energies, this is depletable in nature. So over a period of time, you are bound to lose it and it is very difficult for you to recreate it. So that's where this becomes a very big challenge for us. And today people have started understanding that if you want to transform the life of people, you want to add value to the life of people, you need to understand the accessibility to energy resources as well as that of the systems that are prevailing there. Now, when you start thinking about this, the environment provides us an option, both renewable and non-renewable energy sources like the solar, wind power or the hydropower, geothermal, biofuels, natural gas, coal, petroleum and uranium. So we have a lot of options here, but we stick to few options. The reason is that that's common, that's accessible, that's affordable, and that's what the world believes as a common format of energy. Now, whenever we talk about big words like uranium or probably the geothermal factors, we're not much into it because we have not discovered resources into that sector. But we are very, very common and familiar with the word called as petroleum, coal, and the natural gas, because these are the things that are spoken about in our day-to-day life. Now, moving forward, when we start thinking about the increased use of fossil fuels without the action to mitigate greenhouse gases would be a very big challenge for the global climate changes implications. What we have been doing is that we have gone forward and we have burnt almost every single fossil fuel that is available to us. Why? Because we believe that the fossil fuels are the immediate source of energy supply and we have been burning it out as far as possible. So that burning of the fossil fuels has made us understand very clearly the implications, the efficiency factor, and that has already created an impact on this entire global energy factors. Now, when you see that the energy efficiency and increase of renewable resources contribute to the climate mitigation and disaster risk reduction factors, maintaining and protecting the ecosystems allow using of further developing of hydropower sources of electricity and bioenergy. Now, the long run focus for us, or rather when I talk about the futuristic belief of what we are intending to do in the coming years, is that we want to maintain energy efficiency. We want to see that the usage of any of these values, let it be petroleum, let it be electricity or any other forms or factors, we want to see that they are able to give us a better source of return in terms of efficiency and also in terms of growth. So over a period of time, what is very interesting for us to see is that hydropower or electricity generation, or even probably when we talk about coal, gas, or usage of any other factors are needed, no doubt about it. But then if you maintain it, you protect it properly, automatically that can help you to increase the efficiency and also maintain a balance between the human beings and the ecological system. So this is what we are looking into. That's very, very important for all of us. And this is what we are trying to understand in terms of our growth factors. Now, the fact that we need to understand for today is that 3 billion people rely on wood, coal, and charcoal, or animal waste, or cooking and heating. Energy is the most dominant contributor of climate change, accounting to around 60% of the total global greenhouse gas emission. And since 1990, global emissions of carbon dioxide have gone up more by 46%. So we have some alarming statistics here, which is actually trying to make us understand what has been the serious implications across the globe. Now you can see that if the world population is roughly about 8 billion people, and let's say that out of the 8 billion people, 3 billion people rely on wood, which means to say that that's quite close to almost 50%, but not 50%. Let me just put it around at 40-45% of people rely on wood, coal, and charcoal. Now, this is a very, very big factor. That means we have been constantly chopping down the trees and the greener segment as far as possible. Why? Because man has always felt the need for the fossil fuels to be removed as far as possible, the natural wealth for his survival. Followed by energy is the dominant contributor. Why? Because 60% of the greenhouse gas contributing comes out from this particular energy. So they are the people, or they are the sector rather, which contribute to the greater amount in terms of the greenhouse gas emissions, which do cause some harm to the environment. Followed by, since 1990, global emissions of carbon dioxide have increased more than 46%. And this is quite natural. We can't say no to it. Why? Because this is how things have gone ahead over a period of time. We have been constantly trying to do something, but nevertheless, we have not been able to come up with something really good enough. We have always faced challenges here. Now, the other thing that we are worried about, that we are trying to see here, is that the hydropower, which is the single largest renewable electricity source today, providing about 16% of the world electricity at very, very competitive prices. So definitely, yes, this is the source for us to generate electricity. It dominates the electricity mix in several countries, developed as well as that of the emerging countries altogether. So we are definitely going to speak about this in the coming chapters. Why? Because this is one of the most important things that we have been looking into. Followed by bioenergy, which is the single largest renewable energy source today, providing about 10% of the energy supply. So one side you have the hydropower, which is said to be the most common factor altogether. The other side you have the factors like the bioenergy, which has been contributing as a single largest the renewable factor today. So somewhere down the lane, we are trying to make bioenergy even more efficient so that the renewability factors are going up higher and we will be able to contribute better towards the living conditions. Now, what is the target we have? The target is that by 2030, ensure that universal access to affordable, reliable, and modern energy services. When the government of India wanted the private sectors to come into the power play or the power sector, the intention was very clear that you cannot believe and you cannot keep on depending on the government to supply energy resources to such a large country. So what we wanted is private companies like the Tata Power, for example, or when we talk about SR or Reliance or Adani to come into power play. Why? Because we wanted them to provide a modern, accessible energy services or resources to the people. So this is very, very important. Why? Because unless without this, we will not be able to go forward. We will not be able to gain much of traction there. Followed by 2030, we also want to double the global efficiency, the improvement rate in terms of the energy efficiency. Why? Because we feel that somewhere down the lane, we need to improve the efficiency to a very great extent. We need to see that how energy can be multiplied in terms of its impact, in terms of its production, in terms of reaching the people, in terms of making it even more acceptable in nature. And by 2030, increases of substantially, that is the global share of renewable energy as well as the global energy mix. So this is also going to be a very important factor as people are talking about today, since we all know that this is the factor, this is the line of thought process that we have been talking about. We believe that at some point of time, we have to understand how to improve the efficiency, how to go forward in terms of thought process, how to build up the entire energy resources. And plus, we also want to see that there is a substantial source of growth in terms of energy, in terms of the criteria, in terms of accessibility as far as possible. So it is mandatory for all of us to understand the entire global energy mix. Why? Because somewhere we will find that people have the accessibility at greater level, and in some other parts of the globe, the energy mix is slightly lesser. So now what happens is that we want to create an open map, an open system altogether where we can share the energy across. Now, it is not mandatory that we have to be, export dependent, import dependent kind of thing. Rather, we can create a common platform, share the best practices so that the renewable as well as the non-renewable energy are judiciously used. Followed by 2030, enhance the international cooperation to facilitate the access of energy research and technology, including that of renewable energy, energy efficiency, and the advanced and cleaner fossil technology promotion. We are also talking about energy infrastructure, clean energy technology. All these things are possible. By the factor of 2030, expand the infrastructure and upgrade the technology for supplying sustainable energy services for all developing countries, particularly at least the least developed, that small island, we are developing states, and the landlocked developing countries factors altogether. So that's how we want to see that this becomes more supportive in nature. We are able to create a better resource factor altogether. What we want here is that though the country might be landlocked, though there might be certain geographical factors, but this is mandatory for us that we go forward and create a much more sustainable energy development process, so that over time period, the developed and the developing country, the gap reduces and we are able to create a better energy resource altogether. Now, the next one is renewable, ensuring that universal access to affordable electricity by 2030 means investing in clean energy resources such as solar, wind power, and thermal, adopting for a cost-free standards of wide range of technology. So yes, we want to make electricity predominantly a cheaper source of energy rather than investing too much of money and making it costly for the consumer. So what we want is that at some point of time is that we want to reduce the consumption that is done by the buildings and industry, because 14% is being consumed by them. So we want to find out any alternative means by which we can reduce this factor. Similarly, we also see that about 1,300 mid-sized power plants which are coming up, expanding infrastructure, upgrading technology to provide clean energy sources in developing countries is a crucial goal that can both grow and encourage, develop the environment factors altogether. So this is now becoming a very, very important clause for all of us to understand, to take it forward. Why? Because this is how we will be able to sustain and grow the energy factor. So this is very, very important for the environment as well as for the growth segmentation altogether. So this is how things are working for us in terms of the renewable energy sources. An example of key business actions and solution: ensure that all employees and families have access to reliable and affordable source of energy by investing in local infrastructure to establish accessible energy services, which is mandatory. Commit to the sourcing 100% of operational electricity needs from the renewable energy sources. Yes, which is coming back in a very big way to all of us. Why? Because we need to understand how we need to commit for the employee success, for the growth altogether. So we need to commit in terms of the factors that have been given to us. Followed by also, when we are talking about this, we also need to see that everybody gets a share of the renewable, non-renewable energy sources, so that everybody will be having an access to the common pool that is being generated. Now, the other thing is that reduce the internal demand for transport by prioritizing the telecommunication incentive list on the energy intensive modes such as train travel over auto and air travel. So what we want to promote is the public transport to a greater extent, rather than people going in for a bigger and luxury cars where they spend a huge amount of money in terms of petrol, and the consumption also goes up. So we want to create much more, mass rapid transport systems which can take people from one end to another. We can connect it. Like yesterday, if most of you might be seeing through the various social medias and platform, there is going to be a speed train, a bullet train that's going to be connecting between Bangalore and Hyderabad in less than 2.5 hours. So what we are trying to do is connect the IT hubs as far as possible. Like this, we want to build in mass transport systems so that we are able to connect people from all centers and make the system even more efficient. Similarly, when we want to invest in R&D related to sustainable energy, which will bring in new technology, new process altogether, and help us to grow very quickly in the market. So this is where we are trying to make the system even more efficient, as that we have discussed now. Now, we are also trying to see that integrate renewable energy into employee benefit package. Yes, this is quite a interesting factor where you can reduce their expenditure and try to promote more on solar electric vehicle investment, as women typically drive much of the energy consumption at the household level. Companies have an opportunity to invest, train women, become more renewable energy entrepreneurs. So this is also possible. What we are trying to do is that we are trying to promote the concept of this, where we can invest, where we can start growing, and we can make the women realize the factor that how they can reduce on the energy factors inside the home. Plus, we also want to prioritize the energy efficiency across operations through tools such as the use of internal carbon price, science-based target, setting them to reduce on the overall demand factors for the energy. So definitely we want to be a world which is having less of the carbon footprint. With this, I come to the end of today's session. I hope and believe that all the facts presented through this session would be helpful to you, both in terms of practical, also in terms of learning the theory. In the upcoming sessions, we will continue to learn more about the sustainable development goals, which are making a very big way and a presence in the modern world. But until then, stay tuned, stay blessed, and stay enlightened forever. Thank you once again for joining me today on this wonderful session.